Midway USA has a huge selection of rifle scopes, plus all the necessary scope rings, bases, mounts, and scope mounting tools to get you on target quickly. We've also got shotgun scopes, pistol scopes, red dot sights, and night vision and thermal imaging optics to serve a variety of different applications. Our offering of weapon lights and laser sights supports a variety of self-defense and target scenarios. Hunters and long-range shooters will appreciate our wide selection of binoculars, rangefinders, and spotting scopes from all of the top brands. For just about everything for shooting, shop midwayusa.com.
Bow hunting all comes down to a moment. And in the moment, you want equipment on your bow that will get the job done. Trophy Ridge products are the tools bow hunters trust. React technology sights, rests, stabilizers, and quivers to help a bow hunter be successful in the field. And those tools are from Trophy Ridge.
Welcome to the Cast Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Episode 363 of the podcast, and we are talking about confidence. Can confidence catch fish? By the time this podcast is over, I will have an answer for you. But before we get to that, I just want to mention that next week is a very special episode of the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast, because episode 364, will correspond with the 10-year anniversary of Casting Across. So I'm not sure what it holds, but it'll be something. Of that, I can guarantee you. But hey, today we're talking about confidence. Confidence in fly fishing, specifically confidence flies. So I'm going to do three things for you. Today I'm going to introduce the concept, if you are unfamiliar with it, or define, if you are, what I mean by a confidence fly or confidence flies. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why I think that it's a real thing. I don't think this is just some sort of thing that we talk about or a arbitrary label that we assign certain flies. And lastly, I'm going to talk about why I think that even if it might be a crutch for you, or you might think it's silly, how it actually can benefit your fly fishing and toto and hole. So let's get right into it. The first thing, what do I mean by confidence flies? Well, I think I've talked about this before in certain ways, shapes, or forms on the podcast. Even last week when I was talking about midges and the Griffith's gnat, I think I mentioned how the Griffith's gnat is a confidence fly for me. So let's use that as an example once again. If I see a fish that is rising to something that I can't see, and I'm not sure if that fish is taking a dry fly or an emerger. That is to say, I can't tell because of the light conditions, because the nature of the current, because of my distance from the fish. If I can't discern if that fish is coming up to a fish that's on the fly that's on the surface, or something that is in the surface film, or just underneath the surface film, then I will put on a Griffith's gnat, usually aim for something like a size 20 or 22, and I'll start fishing that fly over that fish because I have confidence that bare minimum, that fish is going to give me something that I can work off of. I mean, ideally, it's going to rise to it and eat it. But if I notice that it comes up and noses it, if I notice that it glances up, I don't know if fish can glance because they don't have necks, but you know what I mean. I can at least see something that gives me some information, and I can go from there. Other confidence flies that I have, if you've listened to me long enough, you know that I have a dry fly system when I fish mountain creeks, whether I am on the East Coast or I'm in the Rocky Mountains, whether I am up here in New England or I'm down south. I like a size 16 orange or yellow humpy, and I like a size 14 or 16 parachute Adams. Those two flies, in my humble opinion, allow me to discern any and all fish that are rising in a particular stream or even just in a singular pool. A lot of confidence in those flies for their ability to work. Going subsurface, just real quickly, because this is not particularly compelling, I would imagine. I really think that a beadhead hare's ear and then also a beadhead pheasant tail are my confidence flies when it comes to nymphs. They allow me to just present certain profiles and to hit certain depths, and then woolly buggers are mine, along with probably 78 ish% of the fly fishing world's confidence fly when it comes to streamers. But this is where something interesting comes in. For me, it actually is a particular type of woolly bugger that I tie on a jig hook with a certain slotted bead and a certain type of thread. And that's neither here nor there. I'll probably talk about that fly sometime in the future. But here's the thing. None of those flies are special on their own. I mean, a Griffith's gnat is so minimalistic you can't call it special. A hare's ear can be tied in 1,000 different ways, so that can't be special. A woolly bugger can be so many different colors, so many different sizes, so many different proportions that you can't say that fly has something special. But what makes it special in the context of what we're talking about today is that I have confidence in those flies. I described specifically what that looks like for a Griffith's gnat a moment ago, but for the woolly bugger, this is why I have confidence in it. I tinkered with how I tie these, and it gives me certain things that I like. It has a translucent chenille body, and that allows the brighter thread to kind of come through and imitate a bait fish. The fact that it is on a jig hook for me allows me to pull it across the bottom, and I have confidence I'm not going to get hung up. And also, I feel like it gives me a better hookup potential. The fact that it has a bead is going to get it down in the water column, and I'm able to manipulate where it flows in the feeding lanes a little bit better. And the style of marabou that I use is particularly stringy, and I think just has a lot of passive fishability as that thing just drifts and bounces around in the current. So when I throw that out there, all of those things in my mind lead me to believe that that fly is going to give me the best chance at catching any fish that may or may not be in the stream. Now, from an objective standpoint, that is not the case. There may be many flies that are going to be much better at catching all the fish or some of the fish than the fly that I want to use. But those flies, I'm not going to have the same confidence in them. So that's what confidence flies are. Now, why do they work? Here's why they work. Again, objectively, the flies are not better than any other flies. Again, if they're my flies, they're certainly not better than other flies. But I will fish them better. I will fish them harder. I will be more deliberate in how I fish them. I'll give you an example I've probably used in the past, but when I was a young angler, a teenager, an early teen, and even into my late teens, and I was fishing a lot of conventional gear, and I still fish a lot of spinning rods. I would always bomb a cast as far out there as possible, and for 75% of the retrieve, I would just kind of reel the sucker in. But then, once I got to a place in my retrieve, or I guess reeling it in with a spinning rod, where I knew the bottom makeup, maybe what weeds were in front of me, or I could even see that lure, whether it be a crankbait or rubber worm or a spinner or something like that coming through the water, then I would slow down my retrieve. I would really not only slow it down and provide what was probably a much more appealing presentation to all those bass, but I would, add a little bit of wiggle, put some stops and some jerks in there. And so I rarely caught fish on that first 75% of my retrieve, but that last 25% is where I had the most success. It's because I was fishing that lure very deliberately. I think the same thing is true when you're fishing a confidence fly. When you're fishing a fly that you've had success with, you just have this aspect to your angling where you are focusing on things that don't involve trying to diagnose so much, is this actually the right fly? Am I fishing with the right thing? Am I wasting my time? Because I know I'm not wasting my time with a hare's ear. I know I'm not wasting my time with a Griffith's gnat. I know I'm not wasting my time with a parachute Adams. I know it might not be the best fly for this situation, but I know I'm not wasting my time with it. And so what do? I focus on the presentation. How is that fly drifting? And I'm giving it just a little bit more attention. A little bit less bandwidth is being sent over to the diagnosing if it's the right fly or not, and I'm paying attention to actually how that fly is fishing, the presentation. And I think that also extrapolates out to other things also. If I am very confident in my fly, then I'm also going to focus not just on my presentation, but also on my cast and on my approach. And so this has happened to me countless times where I know that that fly I'm going to throw into that little pool on a mountain stream or in that little riffle that runs along a rock. I know that fly is going to at least give me an opportunity for a fish to come up and look at it. I just have all the confidence in the world. And so what do? I stop thinking about the fly and I start thinking about where do I need to be? Where do I need to be to give this fly, which I have a lot of confidence in, the best chance to connect to a fish? So I think more about my approach angle. I think more about my cast. I look behind me to make sure there's nothing I'm hung up in. I think I allocate a little bit more mental energy into making a good cast. Now you might say this is absolutely ridiculous, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, that this is probably a pretty true thing. If you've been given a fly that you don't have a lot of confidence in, you probably have in the back of your mind, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work. And that is going to make its way into your fishing. Now, I don't say this in some sort of weird, we're one with the universe, Zen energy vibe situation where, your apprehension is going to make its way from your brain, down your arm, through your hand, into the cork, down the rod, through the guides, along the line, leader, tippet, fly, and the fish are going to want nothing to do with it. I'm not saying that works in that negative sense, nor in the positive sense. But what I am saying is that you're probably going to fish a little bit harder or fish a little bit more deliberately and fish a little bit deeper when it comes to fishing a fly that you have some confidence in. This happens to me quite frequently where I'll, hit the fly shot before I go out, or I will look on a fishing report on my phone and it says, such and such mayfly in this particular stage is what they're going off of. And so part of me is skeptical. It's like, unless you're in the water that morning and right where I'm fishing, is this really going to be what these fish are going after? And if it's a fly that I look at my fly box, I'm like, that thing is just kind of ugly. That thing doesn't really line up with what I think the fish are going to be going after. I'm just not going to give it that same sort of college try as if I'm fishing a fly I have some confidence in. So again, you may be significantly more mature than that. You may have a much greater grasp on your angling emotion, and your cognitive focus may be much more acute than mine. But I do think this is something that we all kind of have to contend with when we are fishing a fly that we've not fished before, or a fly that we just don't think is going to necessarily work, even if some of the objective, empirical data seems to indicate this would be a good fly to use at this particular time. So I've kind of defined it, talked about why I think it's a real thing, and last thing, I'm going to talk about how it can help your fishing, how it can help your fishing. So the first one kind of goes along the lines of something I just mentioned. So say I am a hare's ear devotee. I think this is the best fly for catching fish on nymphs. You just have to make sure that it's the right size and you have it weighted right. But this is going to connect with anything that swims. But the fishing report says that, say a copper john, which actually copper john's kind of like a confidence fly for me and probably should be for you also. But you're looking at this thing and you're like, this thing is made out of wire. It doesn't look buggy at all. I'm not a huge fan of it. I just don't think it's going to catch fish. Well, you know what? You have the wonderful option in front of you to fish a multi-fly rig and fish as one fly, your hare's ear, that you have confidence in, and as another fly, that copper john. Now, what does this do? Now, this may sound, again, maybe esoteric, maybe abstract, maybe derivative, but I think this is really important. And I've actually gained confidence in fishing new flies, other flies, more flies, flies that I wouldn't ordinarily fish by doing something like this, where I'm fishing it as part of a tandem rig, either as dry fly and dropper or two nymphs or something like that, and getting success on that fly, kind of understanding what it's doing in the water. You could just kind of, grin and bear it, and you can put your nose to the grindstone and just make it work. Or you can give yourself a little bit of a leg up, grease the skids, and attach that fly you don't have a lot of confidence in to a fly you have a lot of confidence in. And now you're kind of splitting the difference and getting the best of both worlds. Something else that I think is beneficial is now that I've talked about fishing confidence flies, when you do pull a fly out of that box that you haven't used before, that you're a little skeptical about, then be deliberate and say, how would I fish this fly if I was fishing a confidence fly? If I was fishing a fly, let me just pretend that I think this fly is going to work. And this really gets back to a principle that am certainly not the originator of. Much, much wiser men than I have said this, but I do think it's about presentation more than pattern. Especially with a dry fly, or even a nymph in fast water. My goodness, we give fish way too much credit. But let's even make it an extreme example. I don't think that many fish care whether we are looking at a very, very pale olive or a dusky sulfur color when that is the dubbing on a heavily hackled dry fly moving over their head at a pretty good clip. There's a number of reasons for this. One, I don't think fish are that smart. Two, it's the silhouette of that fly silhouetted against the bright sky, or even just the illuminated sky that the fish are looking at. And those two colors present essentially the same sort of kind of body shade when you're looking at them from under the water. Now, I know there are anglers that are much better fly tiers and much more scientifically informed than me that will say, oh no, if it's this shade on the Pantone scale versus that one, the fish are definitely gonna know. But I fish in orange hat and I do pretty good, and I fish some pretty ugly flies and I catch some fish. So I really don't buy that. But what that means is that you fish that fly like you would fish the fly that you have a lot of confidence in, and you focus on your presentation. This was a big thing for me when I actually spent a lot of time talking to a couple people who were big, like not Tenkara gear devotees only, but Tenkara tactic devotees, and listening to them talk about how for a lot of the purists, they only take one fly and they will fish it dry, they will fish it wet, they'll fish it as a merger, they'll retrieve it, they'll do all sorts of things. And the success that they get in doing that, not only in small mountain streams, but also in larger trout rivers. And that really kind of set it home to me that this is not just some sort of angling practice that was done out of necessity decades ago when we had less options before us, but this is something that truly is a way to catch fish and probably save some time and fish a little bit more deliberately, mindfully, if you will. And what do I mean by that? You're paying attention to all of those small things, regardless of the fly that's on the end of your line, because your presentation is going to trump your pattern if you're presenting the wrong fly better than if you're presenting the right fly poorly. And so having confidence in yourself is really kind of what we're getting to here. Moving from the flies being the thing that gave you confidence to confidence in your presentation, confidence in your skill, confidence in your ability, confidence in your ability to not just present, but also cast, get in the proper position, read the water, and know that for many of these fish that we're fishing to, they are selective, but they are not in that top percent of highly selective fish where the pattern needs to be completely precise to get them to at least look at it. And then once they look at it, now you have more data in which you are able to alter, maybe first and foremost, your presentation, compress that fly underwater, squeeze some of that floating off, allow it to sink down in the water column a little bit, or, tough it up a little bit, dry it off, make sure it's floating really, really nice and high. Or, if you're the kind of person that does such a thing, take a pair of scissors that you have in your pack to the hackle and snip it off and make it ride a little bit differently. And now you are taking in information and not just playing roulette with what is in your fly box, which is, I think, something that we do all too frequently, which certainly reduces confidence in your fishing, because you do get to a point, and I know this because I've done this, I know this because I have taken people fishing as both a guide and as kind of an informal lowercase g guide, and just from talking to people, where once you start cycling through flies, that's when you kind of hit a point of desperation, and you're really just hoping that this one is going to lead to an instantaneous eruption in the water from these fish striking, and you're not going to focus as much on the beneficial aspects of paying attention to your presentation. Okay. I'm going to put a pin in this and say we are going to put the brakes on. Because I think we've kind of covered it. Is really, this is not so much a tactic episode of the podcast. It's more of a mindset episode of the podcast. And this is I think very important, because I know a lot of folks, again, myself included, where we read an article or we listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video about how to do something and it doesn't work, and we get frustrated because now there's one more dysfunctional arrow in our quiver. Well, a lot of times it means just slowing down, trying it again, making those small alterations to what you're doing. It's almost like a fly cast. You probably have the general principles there, even if you're not great at it. All you need to do is make some slight modifications. As long as you're, holding the rod on the right end, you're probably going to do well. The same thing is true for building up your confidence as an angler and making it more about you and less about the flies at the end of your line. All right, this week on Casting Across, 2 articles, 2 good articles. I never put stuff out that I think is bad. The first one is called The Fly Fishing Show 2026. Usually October of every year, I put out an article that lists some reason why I think that you should go to a fly fishing exposition. In this one, I list the dates also of the fly fishing show that is coming up this next winter. So check that one out and make plans today. That's another reason why I put this in there. Just remind people, you don't want to wait until January when you plan something dumb. Put this on a calendar. Then the dumb stuff gets to the other Saturdays that month. Wednesday's article is called Video, America's Fly Fishing Fountainhead. This in which I present my super squirrely, poorly bound copy of Catskill Rivers by Austin Francis. This is a great book with really cool illustrations. Actually, the guy who illustrated this book made some really cool maps. One of his friends, messaged me to say, hey, I know that guy. And yes, those are cool illustrations. So anyway, go to this video and watch it. And if you haven't picked up this book, I see it at used bookstores all the time. I'm sure you can find copies online. The paperback is available on Amazon, pretty inexpensive, but you can find a big hardback copy at a used bookstore pretty easily. This week's recommendation on the podcast, it is the Great Lakes Pro Jacket by Whitewater. This is not an inexpensive jacket, but I think it is a really good buy for what it is. If you want to fish through the worst of the fall, winter, and spring weather, then you need a really good wading jacket. And I have owned a few wading jackets from fly fishing companies, and I've not been super impressed. And a lot of it has to do with the material. They're waterproof, which is all fine and good. They have lots of pockets, which is great. But I just haven't been as impressed with the material. It's usually not super stretchy. It's not very form-fitting. And I don't want to feel like I'm wearing a poncho out on the river. And so Whitewater designed this jacket with Great Lakes anglers and conventional anglers who are out on boats in the middle of the Great Lakes in bad weather in mind. And so they're having to do a whole lot more than wade out into the river and cast. They're having to do everything that it entails using a big boat and reaching down into the water and using your, getting into your live well and doing all those fun things. And so I've really enjoyed fishing this jacket. Again, not an inexpensive jacket, but like I say with a lot of things, whether it be sunglasses or wading boots or whatever, if that aspect of your fishing really, really matters, then it's worth spending a little bit more money to have something that is going to serve you well. The last thing you want to do is spend $200 on a rain jacket and it stink and you don't want to go fishing in the rain. If you spend a little bit more, then you might be in a better position. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. So you will find a link for the Great Lakes Pro Jacket by Whitewater on this show's notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and then go ahead and rate the podcast in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then go to castingacross.com where there's 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.
This episode is brought to you by Boat Trader, America's largest boating marketplace. Whether you're buying, selling, or upgrading, the Boat Trader app makes it easy. With the biggest selection of new and used boats from dealers and private sellers. Browse, compare, and even apply for financing. All in one place. Download the Boat Trader app and start your search today.
Hey guys, this is Melissa Bachman. Are you ready to stop spooking deer before it's even time to hunt them? Then you need the new Flex S Dark cellular trail camera from SpyPoint. With a no-glow flash option, long-lasting solar power, and a ton of settings that can be changed anytime through the SpyPoint app, there are no more excuses for letting your deer get wise before the season even starts. So check it out for yourself and see why the SpyPoint Flex S Dark is the unstoppable and undetectable scouting tool you need for your next hunt.